Today I'm going to be going over why you are in a unique position, why you are in a place to do what billionaires would love to do. There are individuals in this world that have more money than they know what to do with under their control. They are the asset managers of billions and sometimes trillions of dollars. They are so far above the normal day-to-day that they can't see what you and I can. We, on the ground floor, have the ability, the unique insight into something that they only wish they had the insight into and are only now gaining the insight into. A few days ago, Nico and Opti sat down with a gentleman by the name of Steve. This was on episode 768. Fidelity is filing for a spot ETF. And in that episode, Steve said something that I haven't heard anybody else say. I'm going to play this clip right now.
In the case of Blackrock, Larry Fink was literally talking shit about Bitcoin. You know, I think it was last cycle, it was like 2017, 2018. He's like, Bitcoin is only useful for money laundering. Boy, oh boy, did they do a 180. Does that surprise you at all?
No, because it started with the little or the smaller players. You know, whether you want to talk about, I mean, no one comes to mind at the top of my head right now, but there was people out there that said bad things about Bitcoin in the beginning, and then all of a sudden there's this big change of heart, and now they're on board. And I think the big institutions, I think probably the biggest argument that I've heard on why they haven't jumped in till now is mainly because they have so much money that it really wouldn't be beneficial for them. But as soon as things start to catch on, now they have enough money to push in without taking over the whole thing. So
when he says it like that, it seems so obvious why the large players haven't gotten into the game yet. I really like that Steve here mentioned players because it reminded me of a small game that if you're in any way nerd inclined like I am, there's a really good chance you know what this thing is. Magic the Gathering. When Magic the Gathering came out, there was nothing else like it on the market. Now you might say, oh, well, Dell, there was this other game that tried to do the trading card game thing and some other, yeah, okay, fine. But nothing had broken through the market and captivated imaginations around the world the way Magic did. And now, 30 years later, Magic the Gathering is the unquestionably undisputed king in the ring when it comes to trading card games. Now, you might be wondering why in the world I'm talking about a trading card game on a Bitcoin clip. When Magic the Gathering first came out, nobody was really paying much attention to it. It was just another game. Do you think Blackrock was paying attention back then? No, definitely not. Well, Blackrock was barely even a thing back then. Do you think Fidelity was paying attention, Bank of America, etc.? No, of course not. Nobody was paying much attention to it. And yet, fast forward 30 years and look at this. These are the largest shareholders of Hasbro, the parent company of Wizards of the Coast who makes Magic the Gathering. You've got the Vanguard Group. You've got, oh, what's that? Blackrock. You've got Invesco. You've got Cook and Beeler. You've got Geode. You've got the London Company of Virginia. You've got massive players in this space, but they didn't jump into this space back when Magic the Gathering first came out. They got in once it was established, once millions of people across the globe were players of this game, literal players of this game who were established customer base that wanted to participate in this game. Now, on the same note, you could say that Bitcoin is another kind of game that people are playing. You can play fiat games or you can play Bitcoin games. And yes, there are other games that you can play, stocks and bonds and gold, etc. But when it comes to sound money, there is clearly only one option. The reason I started this clip out by saying that you are in a position that millionaires and billionaires wish they could be in is because you have the ability to see things that they cannot. Look at this incredible infographic that took me nearly 9,000 hours to create. This will explain everything if you have the eyes to see it. This might be one of the most atrocious things I have ever made, so hold tight. All the green are investments. They're all sorts of different ideas from stocks, bonds, gold, venture capitals, this, startups, all the various things that somebody could invest in. Up here, these three represent really big things. You could say this one's Coca-Cola, you could say this one over here is Microsoft, and this one is, Apple. These are the really, really big players in the space. Most stuff doesn't even get to that level. It doesn't even get anywhere near that level. And this, up here above the clouds is just kind of represents just the noise of everything. These square blobs are your Blackrocks, your Bank of Americas, your big institutional players. So they only ever see the things that run rise above all the noise. So they're only going to see the really big players in the space. They have no idea about Bob Jimbo's basement bargain startup thing, which, hey, very well may become one massive conglomerate that is making billions of dollars one year. But at this point, they don't know about that. It is nowhere on their radar. They can't be sitting there looking at every single project that comes out in the world. They don't have the time. They don't have the bandwidth to pay attention to all of that. They might be aware of these that I just drew here, like this one here that is just starting to brush the clouds. Now with Bitcoin is this right over here. But the thing about the Bitcoin one, it's not bigger than any of these other ones. There's things that are way bigger than Bitcoin. But the thing that Bitcoin has going on for it, and Larry Fink has even mentioned this, is that people are talking about it. Next, I'm going to explain to you what it takes to be a venture capitalist. What does it take to be one of the big players in this space, investing lots of money into these different startups? Because that probably isn't you. It certainly isn't me. But to become one of those players requires a lot more than a hope and a dream. Let's go over that. Over here on Investopedia, we have, can you answer yes to these questions? Do you have an MBA? A little over 50% of VCs do, venture capitalists, they do. If you do, did it come from Harvard University or Stanford University? A large portion of VCs with MBAs graduated from one of those schools. Do you have experience working for a reputable firm in technology, consulting, investment banking, media, or a startup? You have to have all of that already to probably be considered for a lot of these companies. Do you have a strong social media presence? This is especially important with LinkedIn, where a large majority of venture capitalists have a presence. Do you have expertise in a certain technology? Do you understand this technology better than anyone? Will people go to you for answers when they have questions about this technology? Do you keep up with the top VC blogs and technology news sites? I didn't even know there were VC blogs, but it makes sense. Do you have a successful investment history? Like an established thing that you've already done? Do you have a plan on working with a partner? If so, you better like that person because you will likely spend more time with your business partner than you would with a significant other. Will you be able to agree on financial decisions with that person? That little thing there starts out by saying, can you answer yes to these questions? I would have to answer no to all of them. How about you? The reason I'm pointing that out is because it's important to understand what it takes to be one of the big time top dog investors in the Blackrock, Fidelity, Bank of America, etc. Vanguard space. It's not a simple matter of, oh, I've got an idea. If I throw $100 over at this startup, I'll make a bunch of money. No, you have to throw hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. You have to have ins and connections. You have to be part of that world. But to be on the ground floor of Bitcoin, to front ran one of the major institutions or all of them, all you need is an internet connection and a way to watch YouTube videos. You can come to a channel like Simply Bitcoin, hit like, subscribe, so you can stay up to date on all of the news, and then you can walk away with an education that many students would love to have. They are going to school for things that are going to be less than useless in the coming years, while you, staying up to date with everything that's happening in the Bitcoin space, will be like a player of Magic the Gathering in 1995. You might be a person back in the early 90s, mid 90s, and go, I think I'll buy some of these cards because one day I might turn them around for insane amounts of profit. I remember looking in a magazine and seeing back then that a Black Lotus was worth something like $500. Now it's worth something like $50,000 or $150,000, depending on the grade and rarity of it, etc. Bitcoin will dwarf all of those things. And with the power of the internet, you can get an education to learn from people like Saifedean Amos, Michael Saylor, Lynn Alden, Dylan LeClaire, Jeff Booth, Greg Foss, etc., etc., etc. And these are exceptionally smart individuals. It is impossible for me to look at people like that and go, no, I'm smarter than all of them and I don't think anything's there. No. Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to Bitcoin, you are in an incredibly fortunate position. If you could go back in time, if you had the option to do this and buy stock in companies like Apple and Amazon and Nvidia when they were pennies, dollars, when they first were released, would you do it? The reason I asked that is because with those companies, there was no real way to know exactly what the trajectory was. You could guess, you could gamble, you could hope, you could dream, but there was no real way to know for sure. But with Bitcoin, you have an opportunity unlike any of those. And I suggest, if you haven't done the research, you start today.